So today we're going to do our front pinion seal. Your front pinion seal is going to be located on your front differential. So here's front differential, here's your front drive shaft. That's our leaking pinion seal. As you can see, it's got a pretty significant leak. So this just runs back to your transfer case, which is mounted to the back of your transmission. So our first step here is going to be, well, I guess you can do it two ways. You can either take the drive shaft and remove it from the yoke, or you can drain all the oil out of the front diff, which is what I did initially. So I took this one didn't have a drain plug, so I took the cover off, let it drain. There was a lot of poly in there, probably because one of those bearings is starting to go out from a lack of oil due to the leak. After I drain it out, I let it drip drain for a while. I clean it as best as I can with brake clean and inspect everything. Make sure you have, no significant chips or wear on your gear. Still tight on the backlash. Then I take the cover and I'll take it to the solvent tank and I'll clean it up, and I'll clean around the edges for the gasket. Just take a wire wheel and clean all this out. Make sure there's no more fluid or any sort of metal shavings in there. This drain plug right here is going to be magnetic, so I take that out before I clean it. That way it doesn't attract and keep any metal. So first thing we're gonna do after I've done this, I'm just gonna show you how to do this properly. There's a few pretty important steps that you want to take into, not really consideration, but what you're gonna want to do when you're changing out this pinion seal. This is simple. These are these 9/16 bolts, and they just go all the way around. Take them out, should just pop off. If not, mine was stuck on there, and you'll see there's a little bit of rust. I just took a mini pry bar, put it on the back of that plate, and just gave it a couple light taps, and it popped off and drained all the oil out. So first thing we're gonna do is just remove that drive shaft. So to take these strap kits, we have two 8mm bolts, and here's the little strap. It just sits right over the top of this, and then you got an 8mm bolt on each side. And because of the angle on this drive shaft, after you get done, make sure you're not in four-wheel drive, unless you're using like a ratchet or a wrench, which I would suggest to break free. Put it in four, break these bolts free, and then you can use an impact. You're already there, you might as well just take them out with a wrench, but I've got it up on a lift, so I didn't really have that option, so I just left it neutral. Got them loose, and then take these 8mm bolts, and if you are just going to use an impact, this left-hand side, make sure it's facing towards the driver's side outside. We'll just stick an impact on there. That top one. Alright. There's that top one coming out. Just gonna grab a hold of it, rotate it. It's a little bit stuck on there. That's alright. That's why we've got a little pry bar. Got it loose. Alright, and then after that, since this one's a little rusty, I'm sure we're going to have to take a pry bar in there. Alright, just break it free. And this is a slip yoke, so it will slide back off of that, on that shaft. That's where the slip yoke sits. And then with these, you just kind of tuck it out of the way, let it hang. Maybe zip tie it to the side if it's really getting in your way and bothering you. Okay, so I'm gonna clean this off a little bit so I can make, really see what I'm doing. There is a lot of backlash in there, and that is not good. So typically, if this was my personal truck, I would rebuild the front end on this. It's not, it's a company truck. It's getting
250, it's at 250,000 miles, so we're gonna replace it soon. We just, would rather get as much life out of it as possible. So check your backlash, so when you're putting it back together, you have a rough idea of where you were at when you put it together. So I'm gonna clean this off, and then I'll come back to show you your steps when you're taking it off. All right, now I got it a little cleaned off. This thing is just rusted to hell, so I sprayed some penetrating oil on there. So what I'm doing and going to do is, for now, what you're supposed to do is, before you take this off, where this nut sits, you want to count the amount of threads that are coming off from your nut. And what this does is tells you what your preload is at. So when you put it back together, you want it to be at the same preload as when you took it off. Now what your preload is just the amount of pressure that is on your roller bearings to compensate for, it's like a pre-compensation for wear, so that they don't loosen up as they wear. So something tells me that, this thing is backed off a little bit, because that's not very many. It's only got 1 or 2. Another thing that we're gonna do is dry this up a little bit. Okay. We're gonna take a paint pen, and we're gonna mark where your shaft is in comparison to your flange. So I just take it, start here, mark your shaft, mark the nut, where it is on the flange, so I can line that up as best as I can once I get to the thread level, once I get to where I want it threaded. That will be one of the last things I do, is mark, is make sure it's exact, so I get my preload correct when I'm putting it back together. So after you mark that, then you're ready to rip this nut off and take the yoke off of the shaft. So the smartest way to get this off would be using a puller, a yoke puller, and I believe we have one, but being part of a fleet shop, sometimes shit just goes missing and doesn't come back. If you don't have a yoke puller, just pop the back of the yoke lightly forward and it should come out. So we'll try. I'll go look for the yoke puller, and if I don't have the yoke puller, then I'll just end up using a hammer to pound it out that way. Alright, so I got my puller here. It's just a basic pulling tool. You got 2 teeth on either side, bolt going through the middle. Oh, and by the way, this nut coming off of this the shaft here is 1 inch and 5/16. So when you're using this puller, use the teeth to grab around the back side of the yokes. There's a lip there. I would assume it's specifically made for pulling the damn thing off. And these are always fun to get started. So there it is. So here's your pinion seal. shaft. Here's your yoke. You got the back side of that rubber, so what you're gonna do is you're gonna take this off of the back of your yoke and you're gonna remove this seal from the back of your your differential. Now it would be ideal to pull your seal out with a seal puller, but being as I don't have one, I'm gonna use something different. And being as most people at home don't usually carry seal pullers, unless you know you're a mechanic for a living at one point. So what I'm gonna do here is something with a flat edge on it, and you can use a flat tip screwdriver or a flat punch. This is just a pry bar, flat pry bar. And around the edges here, you can see where the seal goes. And what you're gonna wanna do is crush it in a little bit. At the same time, be careful not to do any nicking or scarring on your differential. So we're just gonna easily and carefully just try to crush this in. See if I can use a heel bar to get in there. This might probably going to be too big. Maybe not though. Alright, just starting to come, so the heel bar did work. You're going to want to get a drain pan or oil pan under there, so you're going to get some fluid. Or in this case we're not, because that's how bad this thing was. So slide your little plate out of there. Don't lose this, keep track of it. And here's where you got your roller bearing. So to get your roller bearing out, just use a pick. Just grab a hold of it. It should just slide right out. Check your race. And so when you get this roller bearing out, you'll want to inspect it. You know, look for pitting. Spin it, see how well it spins. Check for play, if there's any play in it. This one seems to be all right. I don't see anything, nothing noticeable, so we'll probably, that one should be fine to go ahead and replace it. Now, while you're in here, you're going to want to clean up this edge, and this is you have this little goopy stuff, which is going to be your sealant. You want to peel all this off. I'm gonna get all the rust out of here, all this shit, clean up my shaft, and then I'll be ready for the new seal to go into place. So to get this seal to seat properly all the way, you can use your they make a seal installation tool that'll go inside the rubber of this seal, and it will keep that spread open, so when you go in there, you're not going to have that peeling back on you. I don't have one, so what I found and used, and it worked pretty well, was just a axle nut socket for a semi. And the biggest thing was that I liked the points on it because it kind of kept points evenly over the seal. At the same time, it still had points on the center, so I was able to drive it in and get it flush with the end of this here. So I mean, whatever you got, you know, you got to use what you got, and this is what I had here, and it worked pretty well. So after you do that and you get that seated, you're going to take your yoke here, and you're going to fit it on the splines, and you're going to want to line up your old marks as you had them before as best as you can. Now there is an installation tool for these yokes as well. Not really necessary. As long as you got these lined up as good as you can get them, you can just beat it on until it seats all the way against into that seal. Now, if you remember from before, you wanted to count out those threads. On your nut from when you took it off for your preload. So when you put your nut down on there, you're going to want to make sure you don't leave it past those threads. And before you put that nut on there, you'll want to take it and put Loctite inside of there, because you don't want this thing backing off. So I'm just taking, you know, the nut and just going to put some Loctite inside on the threads and give you a little peace of mind. On the front, you probably don't need as much, you know, because this is just for four-wheel drive. Still always better to be safe than sorry. When you're doing the rear, yeah, you definitely want to make sure that you're getting enough on there so that thing doesn't back off. So we're going to go ahead and seat this guy back down onto the fully onto the shaft here. Looks like I got a little bit of And usually I'm probably just going to want to hold on to this so it doesn't spin those gears while I set this down. Almost there. We're just about there, but a little bit more. Alright. Now I've counted those out. They're lined up here. The nut doesn't matter as much as it matters that your shaft is lined up with the yoke. So when you get those two lined up and you're ready to go back on, you're just going to take your drive shaft, slide it back in, make sure that your ears on your U-joints are sitting inside these two grooves on your yoke. Okay, and then when you put your strap kits back on, so you put your strap kits back on, and your 8mm bolts, you're going to want to put Loctite on these 8mm bolts. Alright, so that way you don't have any chance of these backing off. Because no one ever wants to lose a drive shaft while they're going down the road. That's never a good time. I had a couple guys earlier this year lose a couple front drive shafts from whoever was working here before, just doing repairs quickly and not paying attention to things and taking their time. And you get complacent with minor details such as putting thread lock on these threads, and you end up losing drive shafts. You can lose your whole front end because of that. I mean, there's just so many things that can happen that can go wrong from simply not paying attention to what you're doing and taking the small things seriously. So we're gonna button this down. That's the last thing on this one, so I hope this video helped. I do a lot of different stuff. So I mean, I work on tractor trailer, semis, trucks, and I do anything from just suspension, drivetrain. You know, we'll do transmission, clutches. It doesn't matter. I pretty much anything that comes in this shop, I'll do it. We have skid steers, backhoes, Komatsu, Case. And we got Ford, Chevy, Dodge, Kenworth, Freightliner, Peterbilt. I mean, you name it. We don't have a specific make and model for our fleet. We just get what we can, and we do everything in here. So full engine rebuilds all the way up and down, and I try to post as much as I can. Sometimes I'm in a pinch and I can't get it, but days like today where I have time and I'm by myself and I can, you know, take you guys and walk you through stuff like this, stuff you can do at home, I'm gonna do it. So just subscribe to the page and we can, you know, just keep following me, and maybe one day I'll do something that you've gotten something that is beneficial to you. So again, thanks for watching.